When I look back at that summer, I realize it was the season that altered the rhythm of my life forever. My name is Rebecca Miller, and I had always thought of myself as someone who kept control of her world. I was a wife, a mother, and an aunt who tried to be the steady person others could lean on. But life has a way of surprising you, sometimes in ways that feel so strange you can hardly put them into words. What began as an innocent family gathering turned into a chain of events that shook my marriage, my trust, and my understanding of loyalty. It all started on a sweltering July afternoon. My husband, Daniel, had suggested we spend a week out at his brother's ranch in Montana. His brother, Thomas, lived there with his wife Linda and their teenage son, Jason. Jason was my nephew, though calling him that always felt odd because he was only a few years younger than me. My husband and I had married young, and Thomas had Jason later in life. So here was this 18-year-old boy, tall and lanky, full of restless energy, who always seemed more like a younger cousin than a nephew. We drove out to the ranch with our kids, hoping to give them a break from the city. The ranch stretched across endless acres of fields and woods. It was a place where the sun seemed to linger longer in the evenings, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange and lavender. The kids loved it immediately. They chased chickens around the yard, tried feeding the horses, and begged for rides on the dusty trails. For them, it was adventure. For me, it was supposed to be peace. On the third evening, after dinner, most of the family lounged on the porch while the kids played tag in the yard. Jason was restless, though. He was pacing like he had something buzzing in his head. Suddenly, he grabbed a stick, crouched low, and called out to me, "Aunt Rebecca, you better run, because I'm a prehistoric hunter and you're the prey." His voice carried a mischievous laugh. I laughed back, assuming he was just goofing off like any teenager. But then he lunged at me, chasing me through the yard. The kids squealed, thinking it was hilarious. Daniel shook his head, grinning, and Linda muttered something about boys always acting like cavemen. I ran across the grass, my sandals slipping, my dress catching in the breeze. Jason chased me with a wild look, swinging the stick like a spear. It was ridiculous, yet oddly exhilarating. For a moment, I felt like I was in some other world, part of a game that didn't belong to adults with heavy responsibilities. I slowed, catching my breath, and he stopped a few feet away, grinning. "See, I would have caught you," he said. "Yes, but I let you," I teased, brushing a strand of hair from my face. Everyone laughed, and the moment passed. But that strange feeling lingered with me. The way he had looked at me, the way my heart had sped up not just from running, but from something I couldn't explain. The next few days, Jason kept finding excuses to pull me into little adventures. He'd challenge me to climb the hill behind the barn, daring me like a kid but watching me like something else. He'd help me carry water buckets, brushing past me more than seemed necessary. At first, I told myself I was imagining things. He was just a teenager, playful and full of energy. But slowly, I realized his attention was different. He lingered in conversation, asked questions about my life, and his eyes held mine longer than they should have. One afternoon, when the others were napping, I sat outside with a book. Jason came up quietly and plopped onto the bench beside me. He was sweating from working with the horses, his hair sticking to his forehead. He leaned closer, asking what I was reading. I showed him the cover, but I could hardly focus because I felt his presence pressing into the space between us. He laughed softly, saying, "You know, you run fast for someone who doesn't usually run." I smiled uneasily. That was just silly fun. "Maybe," he said, "but it was different. You looked alive." The way he said it startled me. I laughed it off, but his words stuck in my chest. Alive. When was the last time Daniel had looked at me that way, noticed me like that? My husband was a good man, steady, reliable, but over the years, routine had dulled the edges of our connection. Jason's words made me feel seen in a way I hadn't felt in a long time. And that is where the line began to blur. The days stretched on, full of family meals, horse rides, and long nights where the crickets sang endlessly. But within all that normalcy, there was a current running beneath the surface. Jason found reasons to be near me, and I found myself not pushing him away. I told myself it was harmless, that it was just attention I craved, not actual betrayal. But even then, I knew deep down that I was walking into dangerous territory. One evening, after a bonfire where we roasted marshmallows under the stars, Jason caught my eye as everyone drifted back inside. He whispered, "Meet me by the barn in 10 minutes." My breath caught, and I shook my head, pretending I hadn't heard. But something inside me, a reckless part of me, drove me to follow. I slipped away, heart pounding, telling myself I'd just scold him for being inappropriate. He was waiting, leaning against the barn door, moonlight catching his face. He grinned when he saw me, that boyish grin that was suddenly anything but boyish. "You came," he said. "Jason," I whispered harshly, "this isn't right." "I know," he said, stepping closer, "but it feels real." The silence between us was deafening. I should have turned and walked away, but instead I stood frozen, caught between what I knew was wrong and what I desperately craved, being wanted. In that moment, I realized how fragile loyalty can be, how temptation sneaks in not with force but with a whisper. That night, nothing more happened than words and glances, but it was enough to unravel me. I lay awake next to Daniel, guilt crushing me. My husband trusted me.
He believed in me.
And yet, I was allowing myself to drift towards something that could destroy us. The next morning, I avoided Jason as much as I could. But he didn't stop. The chase had moved from the yard into something far more dangerous, an emotional pursuit I hadn't expected. He'd corner me with words, asking if I was happy, if Daniel treated me the way I deserved. And the truth was painful. My marriage had grown quiet, predictable, even distant. Daniel worked hard, came home tired, and rarely noticed when I needed affection. Jason's attention exposed that emptiness, and I hated myself for being drawn to it. It all came to a breaking point the night before we were supposed to leave the ranch. A storm had rolled in, rattling the windows and sending everyone to bed early. I couldn't sleep, so I wandered into the kitchen for a glass of water. Jason was there, leaning against the counter in the dim light. The thunder cracked outside, and for a moment, it felt like we were the only two people in the world. He looked at me with that same wild intensity from the night he chased me in the yard. "You feel it too, don't you?" he asked. Tears stung my eyes. "It doesn't matter what I feel. It can't happen." He stepped closer, his voice low. "But it already has. Maybe not with actions, but in here." He touched his chest, and I knew he was right. I had crossed a line in my heart, and even if no one else knew, I knew.